Sean Diddy Combs once got into an argument with Denzel Washington during a party. According to a new report, the altercation took place during an all-night affair he was attending.
It has resurfaced amidst Combs' current legal troubles. He faces charges of trafficking, racketeering, and transportation to engage in prostitution.
How far would you go to avoid consequences? For Sean Diddy Combs, the answer was out of this world, literally. Denzel Washington's testimony revealed an escape plan to space, complete with NDAs, billionaires, and a no-return orbit. This wasn't just a dream, it was dangerously close to reality. What stopped it? Let's unravel this shocking story. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Imagine having so much power, so much unchecked influence, that when the walls start closing in, you don't just try to slip out the back door, you plan to leave the entire planet. That's the kind of outrageous scheme Sean Diddy Combs allegedly cooked up. Diddy wasn't just dreaming about escaping accountability. He was envisioning a whole new reality beyond gravity, laws, and, most importantly, consequences.
More lawsuits against music mogul Sean Diddy Combs.
And what did this dream include? A floating utopia for the rich, untouchable, and morally bankrupt. The so-called Heaven Lounge, where Earth's rules would be left far, far behind. According to insiders, this wasn't just a wild idea spitballed after too many drinks. Diddy had crafted an entire vision. Think an orbiting safe haven where the wealthy could indulge without limits. The plan revolved around a massive zero-gravity party, what he allegedly called Freakoffs, all held under the protection of rock-solid NDAs. While it may sound like the plot of a bad sci-fi movie, Diddy didn't view it as fiction. He saw it as his legacy. During a now infamous gathering at a high-security Nevada estate, he reportedly laid out this vision to hand-picked guests. Attendees described the event as surreal, with one recalling him saying, "My empire will outlive gravity." It wasn't just arrogance, it was a manifesto. People who heard about Diddy's plans pointed to a pattern of overconfidence fueled by years of money and influence shielding him from accountability. Diddy lived in a world where even the wildest ambitions seemed feasible because, for him, there had never been a clear boundary between possible and impossible.
Disgraced rapper Sean Combs facing 2 new sex abuse lawsuits as he sits in a jail in New York City.
Surrounded by yes-men and billionaires eager to invest as long as the payout was big enough, he began to believe in his own infallibility. After all, no one rises to that level of untouchability without buying the loyalty of everyone around them. Guests weren't just random partygoers either. Every single attendee was allegedly vetted, ensuring no hint of scandal could leak outside the orbit of Diddy's artificial paradise. But then came the most chilling part of the entire plan, the no-return run. This was no vacation in the stars. Reports suggested that for some, there might have been no coming back, literally. A few sources who had seen early drafts of Diddy's setup claimed the spacecraft included emergency mechanisms meant to guarantee silence, though details about what those mechanisms entailed remain murky. Whether this was just paranoia or something far more sinister, the implications were impossible to ignore. The gravity of the plan can't be overstated. It wasn't just talk. To the shock of many, Diddy had already secured investments from other billionaires in his orbit. He wasn't some tech visionary like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, yet managed to lure in enough funding to nail down a launch date. Logistics for a launch site were finalized, and private aerospace contractors were allegedly on board. This was more than an insane fantasy. It was happening. Except, of course, it didn't. The wheels would soon come off this elaborate scheme, and all thanks to one individual brave enough to speak out.
Sean Diddy Combs once got into an argument with Denzel Washington during a party. According to a new report, the altercation took place during an all-night affair he was attending.
So how could such a massive plan unravel? How does someone stop a machine so big, so well-funded, it seems more like a force of nature than a person's idea? The answer lies in a single whistleblower, an insider who couldn't ignore the warning signs bubbling beneath Diddy's empire of indulgence. Without them, Diddy would have been sipping champagne miles above Earth while accountability tried and failed to catch up. What happens when someone on the inside realizes what they're working on isn't just another high-paying project, but something deeply disturbing? The final breaking point came when they caught wind of the mission's codename, the Reawakening. It sounded ominous, not inspiring, and paired with Diddy's history of extravagant anything-goes gatherings, it painted a picture almost too dark to comprehend. Things took an even stranger turn when they discovered plans for a covert launch site in South America, far from prying eyes and regulatory oversight. The more details emerged, the more impossible it became to view this as harmless indulgence. This wasn't about innovation, it was about escape. And privacy here didn't mean discretion, it meant secrecy on an alarming level. The contractor didn't stay silent for long. In late 2023, they handed over everything they'd collected to federal authorities. Emails, recordings, project specs, every shred of information they'd held onto as their suspicions grew came pouring out. That tip sent shockwaves through federal agencies that had no idea a project of this scale was nearing execution. Teams moved quickly, scouring every claimed detail, from shell companies bankrolling the operation to those in Diddy's inner circle who helped orchestrate the plan. They realized the Reawakening wasn't just a nickname. It was Diddy's exact belief that this space mission would be his triumphant rebirth, free from Earth's legalities and prying eyes. When authorities acted, they did so with precision, hitting hard at the heart of operations. A full-scale raid targeted a mock capsule housed in a heavily guarded warehouse. Diddy himself was inside, reportedly giving final instructions when agents stormed the building.
But the parties have recently come under scrutiny in the wake of Diddy's arrest on sex trafficking, racketeering, and prostitution charges.
The image of him standing in what was essentially a club outfitted for orbit was jarring. A billionaire clinging to an illusion of freedom, even as accountability finally caught up with him. The capsule was dismantled, confiscated as evidence, and immediately taken off the board as a viable escape route. But this wasn't just about stopping a launch, not even close. What this whistleblower exposed reached far beyond one man's wild ambitions. It revealed how easily Diddy had cultivated a system designed to support him, even when it meant brushing against, or outright trampling, ethics and the law. Billionaires, private contractors, international partnerships, every layer had been meticulously constructed to shield him. And unraveling that system wasn't just about grounding a spacecraft. It was about tearing apart the foundation that had allowed Diddy to operate unchecked for so long. When Diddy was arrested, it was treated as a victory by many, but those closest to the case knew it wasn't the real story.
Has resurfaced amidst Combs' current legal troubles. He faces charges of trafficking, racketeering, and transportation doing.
The bigger picture wasn't just a busted escape plan, it was what had fueled the need for it in the first place, something far more chilling that years of NDAs, money, and silence had kept buried. Yet, as swift and decisive as the federal action had been, the most damning revelations didn't surface until Denzel Washington took the stand. That's where everything changed, and suddenly, Diddy's downfall wasn't just about a failed mission, but decades of secrets finally exposed. What does it take for someone like Denzel Washington, an indisputable icon in Hollywood, to step into a courtroom and testify against one of the most powerful figures in entertainment? For him, it wasn't about courage or heroism, it was about survival, but not in the way most people define it. "I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent," Washington admitted to the jury, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. He wasn't aiming to make headlines or lash out in some act of revenge. He was there because the weight of years of silence finally broke him down.
An insider who was allegedly close with the Oscar winner told Us Weekly that Denzel screamed, quote, "You don't respect anyone," at Diddy.
He described the suffocating reality of Hollywood, the whispered warnings, the glances exchanged at events, the way young artists radiated fear in the presence of men like Diddy. "I saw things, I heard things, and I stayed silent," he confessed, not bothering to sugarcoat his own complicity. According to Washington, the unspoken rule was simple: keep your head down and no one messes with you. But that rule came at a cost. His nights were haunted by the faces he ignored, the red flags he brushed aside. "This isn't about revenge," he told the jury. "This is about what happens when power goes unchecked."
Denzel and Pauletta reportedly witnessed something so offensive that it caused them to storm out of the event.
One moment stood out above the rest: the 2016 night at Diddy's Beverly Hills estate. Washington painted a vivid picture of glitz and excess, laughter, tinkling glasses, and pulsing music echoing through the sprawling mansion. But amidst the glamour, there was something darker. Diddy's young son had come downstairs, his face stained with tears, only to be dragged back up by men Washington recognized as security. Minutes later, the mood shifted. Denzel could hear shouts, glass shattering, and Diddy screaming, "You'll learn discipline in this house, or you'll disappear like the rest." It wasn't just shocking, it was a crystallizing moment that made it impossible for him to keep shrugging off the whispers anymore. But what does one incident mean in a world that thrives on keeping skeletons locked away? For Denzel, it meant the beginning of a slow unraveling of guilt.
A new exclusive report in Us Weekly reveals actor Denzel Washington had a heated confrontation with rapper Sean Diddy Combs at an all-night party.
He revealed how, in 2018, he confronted Diddy in private. His voice tinged with controlled outrage, he recalled asking, "What are you doing to people? What are you doing to your own family?" Diddy's response was bone-chilling. "You raise lions by throwing them to the wolves." Denzel said it was in that moment he understood. Not only was Diddy fully aware of his actions, he believed in them. He believed that fear and control equaled strength, and no amount of reason could penetrate that mindset. The nightmares began to creep in soon after. Washington described how his guilt turned into a nightly torment. He dreamed of parties where faceless children wandered through decadent halls, crying but unheard. He dreamed of speaking out but waking up paralyzed because he knew the cost of crossing someone like Diddy. "If I spoke out, I'd lose everything," he admitted. "But if I didn't, what kind of man would I be?" The final straw came when Diddy's plans to leave Earth surfaced. To Denzel, that was the ultimate injustice. A man who hurt so many trying to flee while his victims were left broken and voiceless.
In America.
Well, listen, we live in America, and in America we have the freedom to express ourselves. We shouldn't take that for granted.
That, he decided, was more than he could bear. In the courtroom, Washington didn't just focus on Diddy's actions, he went after the entire system that allowed it to happen. He spoke of publicists silencing whispers, cleanup crews scrubbing away any trace of wrongdoing, and NDAs that shut down anyone brave enough to raise concerns. He even detailed the time he stumbled into a back room in 2015, where a guard was packing up hard drives under the guise of client privacy protocol. Washington called out the industry's complicity, saying, "This wasn't one man doing bad things. This was a system designed to protect him." Directing his final words to Diddy himself, Washington delivered a truth that struck harder than any verdict ever could.
Washington reportedly abruptly left with his wife telling Diddy, quote, "You don't respect anyone."
"You said you were building something eternal, something that couldn't be touched. You thought if you could make it to space, you'd be untouchable. But what you didn't understand is that you don't escape truth by leaving the planet. You just leave the people you've destroyed behind."
Combs has denied any wrongdoing. He is currently jailed in New York as he awaits his criminal trial.
The courtroom was silent, stunned by the weight of his words. For Denzel, the decision to speak wasn't about being a hero. It wasn't about praise or revenge or even justice necessarily. It was about stopping the cycle, about making sure that the silence he once upheld wouldn't keep protecting men like Diddy.